The Vice President, Honorable General Retired Constantino Guvheya, Dominic Nyikadzino Chiwenga, the Honorable Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development, Professor Amon Murira, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Zimbabwe, Professor Nyongolo, the Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Dr. Mishek Sranda, the Deputy Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Dr. Rain Lukula, the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Mashiri, Permanent Secretaries here present, Senior Government officials, Deans of Faculties, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the University of Zimbabwe, to the Joshua Mqabulo Nyongolo Nkomo Centenary Celebration Public Lecture. At this juncture, I'm going to call upon Mr. Wakula Lovu to come and give us a brief 5 minutes at most take with regards to the life of Dr. Joshua Mqabulo.
Master of Ceremonies, the Vice President of Zimbabwe, General Retired Dr. Constantino. I thought it was Retired General, not General Retired. Retired General Dr. Constantino Guvheya, Dominic Nyikadzino, Chiwenga, the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, the Nkomo family, ladies and gentlemen and friends. May I begin, ladies and gentlemen, by briefly introducing myself so that you can appreciate my credentials. My name is Wakubandlovu, and for 18 or more years, about 18 or so years, I worked full-time as the Director of Publicity and Information for ZAPU and was based in Lusaka in Zambia, having first of all associated politically very closely with the liberation movement here in the then Salisbury, and was working very closely too with the Publicity and Information Secretary of the then ZAPU, Robert Mugabe, and others. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not dwell very much on Dr. Nkomo's life that has been narrated several times. I will, however, say a few words about his thinking, his political thoughts, his philosophy, his aspirations, his passion. Dr. Nkomo formed the wish to liberate this country as a result of the removal of his people from one place to another in the then Matobo district. They were removed, they were displaced, that is the right word to use, because room had to be made for white settler commercial farmers. His passion to free the black people of this country was created really by the fact that whenever they were removed, livestock was taken arbitrarily. Not only that, but they were also conscripted into labor to work for the white farmers. that prompted Dr. Nkomo to say the people must be liberated. When later on he went to South Africa, he met some people in South Africa who had been members of the African National Congress, an organization that was formed in January 1912, some 5 years before he was born. And they imbued in him the wish to lead his country from colonial bondage to freedom. Among those people was Nelson Mandela. Dr. Nkomo came back and worked for the Rhodesia Railways, where he was very soon elected to be the Secretary General of the Rhodesia African Workers Union, RAWU. And it was there in Bulawayo, that is where he was based, that he met the then president of the Southern Rhodesia African National Congress, a Reverend Thompson D. Samkange. That is the man who actually propelled Dr. Nkomo to higher heights in politics, because he recognized in him that passion for the liberation of this country and made him virtually his deputy president. They used to meet quite often at the Stanley Hall in Makokoba, that is Bulawayo's oldest township. In 1951, Dr. Nkomo's name had been peddled around in Salisbury, and the Prime Minister, Sir Godfrey Huggins, later Lord Malvern, wanted an African, representing African opinion, to accompany him as part of a delegation to London to discuss the formation of a projected federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. He invited Dr. Nkomo. The other black people who were invited were Mike Masocha and Jasper Zengeza Savanu. Those three went to London to go and put across African views. Dr. Nkomo tells me that when they got there, they thought they were speaking with one voice, but it turned out that Mike Masocha and Jasper Savanu were in fact only listening to the voice of Sir Godfrey Huggins, the Prime Minister of South Rhodesia, who was the leader of the delegation. Now they came back, but Dr. Nkomo's view in London was that whatever they wanted to form, they had better consult the people, the African majority. I would like you to remember that. That is important. That was a philosophy of Dr. Nkomo until he died. The voice of the majority was to him the most important thing, the opinion of the majority. They came back and he stood as an independent. At that time, ladies and gentlemen, we were just, when I say we, I'm talking about the black people crawling as it were into the political arena in this country, unlike in the protectorates of Nyasaland, now Malawi, and North Rhodesia, now Zambia. Those people had actually been nurtured and shown a bit of political light by the colonial administrations in Lusaka for Zambia and in Zomba for Malawi. Here, there was nothing of that sort. We were out there in the reserves, what were called the native reserves. Remember the word native, you see, but it was not used in the anthropological sense. It was used to discredit us, to, well, you looked at animals and then the next range in the social ladder were natives. So anyway, Dr. Nkomo lost and Masocha Wobe won the Matabeleland constituency. Over here in Mashonaland, Jasper Savanu won, and they became federal MPs. Later on, Jasper Savanu went to London, where he was a diplomatic representative, a press attaché, and Mike Masosha Wobe was a deputy ambassador in Lagos, in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, Nkomo then remained and led the African National Congress of Southern Rhodesia, now, which was, as you know, banned. But good, that is not what I intend to dwell on. May I now come to the thoughts of Nkomo. Nkomo's belief was that unity, national unity was paramount, and that whatever you wanted to do in this country, you had to unite the people. The people, not only the black people of Matebele land and Mashona land, but even the white people, the Indians, and the colors. That was his dogma. That was his belief. That was his passion. Now, he did not have time at all for racialism. He did not have time at all for regionalism. He didn't have any time at all for tribalism. He believed that a human being was a human being without necessarily branding him a Shona or a Ndebele. What you needed was whether or not you had human characteristics. If you had those characteristics, that is all that Nkomo stood for. And another thing that Nkomo stood for was economic development. He believed very strongly indeed that in order for a country to prosper economically, you must empower the villager. Don't talk about the higher macroeconomics and so, talk about the villager. If the village has got lots of chickens, lots of goats, lots of pigs, lots of cattle, that village is alive. If the village has got enough food from the fields, that village is alive. That is what he believed in, that a village has got to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, and that was what Nkomo stood for. Take 20 villages, self-reliant 20 villages. If they can at Christmas time sell one another chickens or goats or pigs or whatever you have, then that ward is living, is alive, is prosperous, is economically viable. That was what Nkomo stood for. From wards, you went on to districts. He believed that a district ought to identify its potential, its natural resources, and see how it could exploit those resources, and see how it could then economically relate to its neighboring districts. How can Mangwe district, for example, relate to Matobo district, his home area? Can they sell from Mangwe? Can they sell vegetables to Matobo district? And how can Matobo district relate to Beitbridge, and so forth and so on? District, inter-district dependency. That was Joshua Nkomo. And then from district you went to provinces. And provinces, then you went to the nation as a whole. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Nkomo. Now, may I wind up, Master of Ceremonies, by saying, Dr. Nkomo stood for the prosperity of not only Zimbabwe, but the whole region, because he believed that if Zimbabwe were prosperous, and Mozambique was not, and Malawi was not, what would happen is that the Malawians would come here, the Mozambicans would come here, and strain the resources and the meager prosperity that each individual Zimbabwean was enjoying would then be minimized by the outsiders who had been driven away from their country by poverty. We have seen that happening in South Africa. You call it xenophobia. Our people are there. Our people in Botswana, I come myself from Planty, and neighboring district, Wililima, to Botswana. When we grew up, the Botswanans looked after our cattle, but now the matter has been reversed. We looked after the cattle of the Botswanans. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nkomo was a man of industries. He believed that each locality ought to industrialize, and because of that, he started a number of projects which I am afraid Master of Ceremonies were scuttled by the Robert Mugabe government. I felt that I should mention this because up to now, we have a hospital, a social facility in Bulawayo, which is unopened and not functioning. For whatever reason, I really do not know. Probably the Vice President will explain to us a little later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ndovu. I know it was very hard for him to go ahead and give 5 minutes, extended 5 minutes of history of such an icon. I am challenging particularly the students in this room, and I see lots of students, some of them mature, to go ahead and look for material on Dr. Nkomo, so that we really go ahead and come to grips with our own heroes. At this juncture, I'm going to call upon the Vice Chancellor of the University of Zimbabwe, Professor Nyongolo, to give us welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies, the Honorable Vice President and Minister of Defense and War Veterans Affairs, General Retired, I'm told that is the order, Dr. Constantino, Guvheya, Dominic, Nyikadzino, Chiwenga, the Honorable Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development, Professor Mqabulo, the Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Dr. Michelle Smada, the Deputy Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Dr. Nyongolo, the Nkomo family, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development, Dr. D. Smada, the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Honorable Vice President, Nkomo, Reverend Damasani, the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Research and Academic Affairs, Professor Mashiri, members of the diplomatic corps here present, senior government officials here present, captains of industry here present, deans of faculties here present, directors of institutes, university staff, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Vice President, may I take this opportunity on behalf of the university community and on my own behalf to welcome you to the University of Zimbabwe. You are coming here not as a student, but now in a much more different, exciting position. And as an alumnus of the University of Zimbabwe, we are happy to see one of our graduates occupying a very top position. So I'm sure we are doing a good job as the premier institution in the country. I also wish to welcome the rest of the invited guests, pupils from high schools, and people from the general public, and many other organizations. This is your university, so feel at home. We are a public institution, which means every Zimbabwean is a shareholder in the University of Zimbabwe. So welcome to UZAT. I'm really grateful that the Honorable Vice President chose UZAT to partner in the hosting of this very important event. An event where we are looking at the contributions of one of the sons of, Zimbabwe. An iconic figure, an important figure in the history of Zimbabwe, in the political history of Zimbabwe. As we listen to the previous speaker, there is no doubt, that Dr. Joshua Nkomo was really the son of the soil, was really a concerned, citizen of, this country. The Honorable Vice President, the role of the university is not only to train students, but it is also to celebrate the achievements and successes of the Zimbabwean society. And this is one of such events. An event that puts us on the international map, an event that makes us a leader in terms of our activity in development, in national development, in the industrialization and modernization of Zimbabwe. We are grateful that you took time to be here today. We're always aware that your office is very, very, busy. What is happening today is something that should mark the beginning of such, events. When we celebrate our own, people, our own, leaders, our own leading economies, our own leading, lawyers who show commitment to the welfare of the majority of, this country. And so, as we shall attentively listen to your, lecture, I hope, that the youth will learn a lot on how to transform their lives to become, important, reliable, responsible, and accountable leaders of this country for tomorrow. And so I wish you well, and I hope we will all go away well informed and with some transforming messages that we need to carry as we move ahead in the new dispensation. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, Professor Nyongolo. At this juncture, I just want to, all important events at the University of Zimbabwe, we live stream them. So you can actually share that if someone goes on Facebook and looks for University of Zimbabwe channel, they can actually go ahead and see this event live as it is occurring. At this juncture, I'm going to call upon to give us opening remarks the Honorable Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development, Professor Mqabulo, and also to introduce our guest of honor, Acting President. Thank you.
The Acting President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, the Honorable Vice President and Minister of Defense and War Veterans Affairs, General Retired Dr. Constantino Guvheya Dominic Nyikadzino Chiwenga, the Deputy Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Dr. Mqabulo, the officials from my Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development, Pro Vice Chancellor, Research and Academic Affairs, Professor Betsai Mashiri. Of course, I forgot to say just after me, Vice Chancellor of the University of Zimbabwe. Professor Levi Martin Nyagura, members of the diplomatic corps here present, senior government officials, captains of industry here present, deans of faculties here present, directors of institutes, university staff, our distinguished discussant, Professor Asu Patel, Acting President of the Republic. We are gathered here today to celebrate the life of a nationalist who devoted a great portion of his life to fighting for the rights of others, specifically the rights of the people of Zimbabwe. A nationalist who contributed to Zimbabwe's heritage, and we shall always honor his sacrifice and devotion. Ladies and gentlemen, the name Joshua Mqabulo, Nyongolo Nkomo, Father Zimbabwe, shall forever be remembered for cultivating the spirit of liberation amongst us Zimbabweans through a spirited and unflinching resistance to minority rule. To us, when we say what does Joshua Mqabulo Nkomo represent to us, we say he represents humility, he represents tolerance, he represents national consciousness, he represents selfless dedication, going forward without looking backwards. The Africa and the world and the Zimbabwe we want, acting president, Africa needs its people who love it by doing, based on the strong belief that as Africans we can do it if we are organized. No one but ourselves can ensure we create the Africa and the world we want. The Africa of our dreams, where peace prevails, where conflict, poverty and disease are reduced and eventually eradicated. Remembering that our destination is the mountain top, which is the top of performance. And as we go to that mountain top, we don't want to be confused by little streams on the way. In other words, we are saying when we reach a stream and we drink water, we should not forget that we are going to that mountain top, acting president. We want to build Zimbabwe as we have instructed us to do, brick by brick. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving forward, building this country, Zimbabwe, from very strong foundations and principles of our independence that embody unity, freedom, and work. And we are consciously constructing it brick by brick, inspired by the revolutionary spirit of our late father Zimbabwe. We should be eternally grateful to what Joshua Mqabulo, Nyongolo Nkomo, and others did for this nation, including yourself, acting president, honorable vice president. They fought to give the Zimbabwe people the dignity that we want through empowerment, education, and other programs we have been rolling out since 1980. We are talking like this because of that education that you fought for. For us in education, we have been inspired to form what we call University with 5 missions, University 5.0. A university that teaches, a university that researches, a university that does community service, a university that does innovation, and a university that does industrialization. All this is based. Normally universities have been teaching a lot, which I call University 5.0. We moved to 2.0, 3.0. Now we want, in the new dispensation, you have asked us, acting president as our leaders, to move to University 5.0, that includes innovation and industrialization. For the purpose of constructing the Zimbabwe we want and the Zimbabwe that we deserve. We shall use our heritage to consciously construct a future desired by our people, by ourselves. The liberation struggle gave us the foundation on which to prosper. We say the foundation is strong. What we need now is to use our knowledge to build upwards, not to spend our time on the foundation. The foundation is very strong. We want to move forward. There is no time to waste waiting for imaginary human beings, which I call Godoti. Godoti is an imaginary human being who never comes. You try to wait for Godoti at the bus station, he never comes. You try to wait for Godot to come and cook food for you, he never comes. You try to wait for Godot to build the country for you, Godot never comes. We are the people and we want to move our country forward. We bear the responsibility to move Africa and Zimbabwe forward. In conclusion, Acting President, if you do not know where you are coming from, then you do not know where you are going, because trajectories scientifically are constructed from historical data. We should be eternally grateful to what Dr. Nkomo and others, including yourself, did for this nation. The nationalists laid the foundation for our development by giving us political freedom, and our job is to use this freedom to prosper Zimbabwe economically through our knowledge, using our heritage. As Zimbabwe, we are thinking big and we are moving forward and moving forward with confidence. I now want to go to the second part of my responsibility. I am quite very honored to start by saying we are inspired by the People's General, General Retired Dr. Constantino Guvheya Dominic Chiwenga. As an academic and a scientist, I think you have to know the Geospatial Intelligence Program that is at the University of Zimbabwe is a result of his inspiration. And now we have moved to launching the Zimbabwe National Geospatial and Space Agency. So, Honorable Vice President, Acting President said, you can see where your fruits are leading us to. Let me proceed to read the biography of this man. This is the biography of General Retired Dr. CGDN Chiwenga. The acting president that you see, who is our Vice President of the Republic, was born on 2 July 1956 in Guvheya. He is a family man and was appointed Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe as well as Minister of Defense and War Veterans Affairs on 22 December 2017. The Vice President joined the struggle for the liberation of this country in 1973. He was initially trained in Kafue, Zambia, before undergoing further training in Mqabulo, Tanzania, under the People's Liberation Army instructors. In 1976, General Retired Constantino Chiwenga became an instructor and a member of the General Staff before playing an instrumental role in the formation of ZIPA at Morogoro in the same year. In 1977, he was appointed the Director of Training and Commissariat at Chimoyo and promoted to Zandla Provincial Field Political Commissar for Manica Province that same year, covering the present-day Manica and Mashonale and part of Masvingo provinces. In 1978, he became a member of Zandla High Command and was appointed the Deputy Chief Political Commissar until independence in 1980. In terms of operational experience, during the liberation struggle, the Honorable Acting President, Vice President of this country operated in Manica and Gaza provinces between 1977 and 1979. At independence, he was the head of liaison in Masvingo, Manica and Matilene provinces during the integration period. This People's General, who is now retired, served in the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. The Vice President was promoted Brigadier General on 16 April 1981. It was appointed the first Black Commander of 1 Infantry Brigade up to November 1984. He rose through the ranks, becoming Commander Zimbabwe National Army in 1994 and taking over from the late General Vitalis Musungwa Gaba Zvinavashe as Commander Defense Forces on 1 January 2004. The Vice President, the Acting President today, is a distinguished strategist. I just told you that the Geospatial Intelligence, that is the first program in Africa that you see today, is due to his efforts and guidance. He's not only a strategist, he's a commander, he's a scholar. He's an undisputed champion of Operation Restore Legacy, the People's General. I think you know him very well, defending Zimbabwe's constitution with his life, which exhibited his astute and resolute leadership as well as exceptional interactive and negotiation capabilities. In terms of academic qualifications, he's not only a military general, he's not only a strategist, he is an academic himself, very distinguished academic who leads by example. So in terms of his academic achievements, the acting president is a holder of an executive diploma in business leadership, sure Zimbabwe is open for business, and a first-class master's degree in business administration with Zimbabwe Open University. He holds a master's degree in international relations with this university, University of Zimbabwe, and a doctorate in ethics attained from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. That's why you can see he's a very peaceful general. In terms of decorations, the acting president is a recipient of many medals and decorations that include 1, the Grand Commander of the Zimbabwe Order of Merit, the Liberation Decoration and the Liberation Gold and Silver medals. What is the interest of this retired people's general? The acting president's interests include research, which basically means he doesn't talk without thinking and looking at things, uses the brain first before the mouth, and discussing African military and political history, regional and international conflicts, peace and security issues, and professional hunting. Is a hunter, not of a mouse, of big game. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my singular honor to humbly invite the acting president of this beautiful Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable General Retired Dr. Constantino Guvheya, Dominic, Nyikadzino, Chiwenga, to deliver his lecture.
Please be seated. The Nkomo family, the Joshua Nkomo Cultural Movement Trust, Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology, the Honorable Professor Amon Mubera, other honorable ministers, if they are here, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Zimbabwe, Professor Levi Nyakura, the Chief Secretary to the Office of the President Cabinet in absentia, the Deputy Chief Secretary, Dr. Ray Ndukula, Permanent Secretaries here present, Pro Vice Chancellor, Research and Academic Affairs, Professor Mashiri, senior government officials, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The topic I have chosen, and also in agreement with the family of our late icon, is the role of the military in peace building and national reconciliation. I feel honored to speak on the role of the military in peace building and national reconciliation. Itself a topic under the broad theme, a reflection of ethical leadership. The theme honors the 100th sub-anniversary of our icon, Dr. Joshua Nyongolo Nkomo. My discussions we shall address the role of the military in peace building and reconciliation, and then pan out to sharing with you my perspective on Dr. Joshua Nkomo. In particular, I will highlight the important role he played in building peace and cultivating the ethos of reconciliation in his country, especially his constant nexus with the military both before and after Zimbabwe's independence. At face value, there seems to be no obvious discernible link between the military, ethics, and peace building, as many people associate the military with war and destructive power. The military is generally and traditionally understood as an institutional instrument designed to inflict physical harm, violence, and death on the enemy, however defined. In any case, any violent conflict involves the military as the key player, one way or the other. When you then relate this perception of the military and our discussion today, questions on the appropriateness, legitimacy, and applicability of the military peace building becomes obvious and even contradictory. What needs to be understood is that the military is an instrument of power in any state or nation's insurance policy. This analogy of an insurance policy should help us to understand how the military can be employed by the state both as a preventive and corrective measure. It should also be noted that the use of the military has been evolving from its traditional war fighting dimension to a completely different one, in response to changes in the geopolitical environment. This change has been even more visible after World War II, where peacemaking, peacekeeping, peace building, peace enforcement, and military aid to civil authorities, etc., has morphed into key and central functions of the military. It is also important for us to understand that the act of peace building and reconciliation stems from a situation of conflict, and that a conflict situation usually involves the use or threat of the use of force. My presentation, therefore, seeks to unbundle how the military can be employed as an agent of peace building and reconciliation, to highlight the role played by Dr. Joshua Nkomo in peace building in our country, Zimbabwe. Now, before I get deeper into my discussion, we need to have a common understanding of some of the key concepts that will form the core of this discussion. These are ethical leadership, peace building, and reconciliation. Ethical leadership is understood as a form of leadership in which individuals demonstrate conduct for the common good that is acceptable and appropriate in every area of society's life. Ethical leaders share some common traits and characteristics, such as commitment to justice, respect for others, honesty, humanity, focus on unity and national team building, value-driven decision-making, encouraging initiatives, and self-actualization. Leadership by example, value awareness, and non-tolerance for ethical violations. Peace building is a generic term referring to all activities and initiatives that are intended to create the conditions necessary for sustainable peace to form and to build in the aftermath of a violent and destructive conflict. Sustainable peace allows for a state of human security and fulfillment, which should be enduring and at the very least minimizing the recurrence of violence. Paradoxically, the two-world use of the military in the peace building creates what can be termed a culture of militarism, stemming from the belief that peace building can only be achieved through use of force and violence. Think about a situation where there are two warring groups and a third intervention force is deployed to make, enforce, or keep the peace. And then you get a sense of what I am driving at. Since peace building forms the basis of this discussion, I would like to explore one of the inherent risks and challenge as this process relates to the military. Though the challenges and risks are numerous and invariably situational, I have particularly chosen one which is generally understood as spoiling, as it will have a bearing in the course of this discussion. However, in this piece, I will single out what is generally termed as spoilers. I want to quote from and summarize some aspects of spoilers as propounded by the United Nations University Press in a volume on challenges to peace building, managing spoilers during conflict resolution. Thus, the act of labeling a particular group as a spoiler may reflect a political agenda which is an extension of the conflict itself or the interests of third parties. The volume acknowledges that contemporary conflicts are complex, diverse in nature, and involve an array of actors, motives, and processes both within the conflict area and from outside. From such a perspective, traditional conceptualizations of peace building, conflict settlement processes, and the role of disputants and third parties may seem rather limited. The volume adopts a broad definition of spoiling behavior. At the core of this are the activities of any actors who are opposed to peaceful settlement for whatever reason, whether these come from within or, as is usual, these come from outside the peace process, and who thus use violence or other means to disrupt the process in pursuit of their aims. Parties that join a peace process but then withdraw, or I take that one again. Parties that join the peace process but then withdraw and obstruct or threaten to obstruct the process may also be termed spoilers. Similarly, there are parties that are a part of the peace process but which are not seriously interested in making compromises or committing to a peaceful end game. They may be using the peace processes as a means of gaining recognition and legitimacy, gaining time, gaining material benefit, or avoiding sanctions, and thus can be described as having devious objectives. Finally, spoiling includes actors who are geographically external to the conflict, but who support internal spoilers and spoiling tactics, ethnic or national diaspora groups, states, political allies, multinational corporations, or any others who might benefit from violent conflict or from holding out. So-called civil or domestic conflicts are, in reality, often influenced or characterized by international processes, causes, and consequences. One Terence back here, 2010, of the US Army contains that reconciliation remains an abstract concept in both domestic and international contexts, as well as in academic and governmental contexts. The military role in reconciliation remains even more elusive. He goes on to state that the concept of reconciliation has evolved through an ongoing dialogue between international relations community who view it in realist terms of political and economic structural reforms, and the conflict resolution community who view reconciliation as integrating emotional and substantive concerns. The concept can also be understood differently when viewed as interstate or intrastate. For purposes of this presentation, I will opt for the intrastate understanding. The concept of reconciliation is developed through several disciplines, but consensus has not yet produced a standard definition. Bakiye further contains that spiritual interpretations tend to focus on the aspects of forgiveness and apology, while psychological interpretations analyze past narratives to synthesize future narratives. Political scientists and international relations experts explain reconciliation as the restructuring process of negotiation, mediation, and arbitration oriented on the political, legal, security, and economic systems of a society. Understood from this context, we want to agree that reconciliation seeks to prevent the recurrence of a conflict situation and build a stable environment that allows inclusive interaction in a previously conflicted situation for the construction of one might term long peace. Then I come on to, is the use of the military in internal peace building legitimate or applicable? From the foregoing discussion on peace building, it is evident that the military is somewhat conflicted as an agent of peace building. Peace is built from a conflict, and conflict being a product of force entails the participation of the military as a key agent or player in a conflict. In a paper to a seminar on the role of the military in peace building, one Andrew Rigby says, military intervention is one instrument in a broader spectrum of tools designed to prevent conflicts and humanitarian emergencies from arising, intensifying, spreading, persisting, or recurring. The objectives of such a strategy must be to help ensure that the conditions that prompted the military intervention do not repeat themselves or simply resurface. The consolidation of peace in the aftermath of conflict requires more than purely diplomatic and military action. An integrated peace-building effort is needed to address the various factors which have caused or are threatening a conflict. What is clear is this assertion is that the military is but one player in a peace-building process, and that there is a requirement for an integrated effort. However, many participants in peace building find it difficult to accept the contribution of the military. This is because, as noted by Rigby, the military is seen by many as undemocratic and male-dominated. Some critics have also argued in favor of having the police in place of the army. The proponents of this argument argue that in most cases, the military is deployed before a situation has developed to warrant intervention, leading to an escalation at the expense of the intended goal of peace. Once a ceasefire is declared, many believe that the role of the military should be restricted to probably training and reforming the local military. In the case of intervention by foreign forces, be it under the banner of a regional economic grouping like SADC, a continental bloc such as the African Union, or the United Nations itself, locals might have a feeling of being occupied. The military, under such circumstances, should implement its mandate with utmost care, as it might be a target of hostilities and or even litigation, either under domestic or international law. military integration as a peace-building tool. Whatever I have tried to do so far is to bring a common understanding of some concepts so that subsequent discussions are contextualized. Let me now shift my focus to one of the most challenging aspects of peace building, which is the process of military integration. Brigadier General Frank Rusagara, in a 2011 paper on analyzing peace building in the aftermath of the Rwanda genocide, identifies 3 models of military integration as conflict management strategies. The first is the consent-based model, which is founded on a comprehensive negotiated settlement of conflict between 2 parties, conducted under third-party supervision. Government forces may absorb guerrilla forces, or merge the 2 warring factions to form a single national force. It is important to note that peace building is usually conducted after cessation of hostilities, though the security situation may remain fragile. The second model is complete demobilization, where government decides to downsize its military through the normal channels of peace building, but does not include former enemy combatants in its forces. Examples include Ethiopia's 1991 demobilization of former government forces after the defeat of Mengistu Haile Mariam. The third is the cohesive model of peace building, which involves forced disarmament of insurgents and is usually carried out by external intervention under a United Nations mandate. An example of this is the failed forced disarmament of Somali warring factions in 1993. As a case study, Zimbabwe would suit the first model as we look at the post-ceasefire period of the liberation struggle. I come now to the role of the military in peace building in Zimbabwe. I would like to zero in on the role of the military in peace building in Zimbabwe. The concept of peace building is usually associated with countries that are emerging out of a conflict. I am, however, of the view that peace building in a country or region is always a continuous process, and that some of the activities might not attract so much attention. In addition, security challenges are always evolving. The number of interstate wars are decreasing, as are traditional wars. New challenges are emerging with the advent of high unemployment rates, particularly among the youth. Security threats from non-state actors, irregular migration, climate change, and environmental degradation, among others. These phenomena have a huge impact on peace and security, just like wars, and the military is working with the various institutions in combating these challenges. For example, the Zimbabwe Defense Forces is increasingly involved in the fight against hunger, patrols to combat crime along the borders, and many other economic development activities. Dr. Joshua Nkomo and his role in peace building in Zimbabwe. The story of peace processes in Zimbabwe, from pre-independence to post-independence, can never be fully discussed without factoring and acknowledging Father Zimbabwe as the late Dr. Joshua Mqabulo Nkomo was popularly known. Father Zimbabwe did not only rally us in the fight against colonialism, he also once again rose to the occasion immediately after independence to lead the intricate process of founding a new nation. This was not an easy process. The people's expectations among the black majority were high and mixed, given uncertainty particularly of those who were at the front, the white minority community and those in the security establishment. Given what had happened elsewhere following the dawn of independence, men feared what would become of us as a nation. It is therefore not possible to chronicle all Dr. Nkomo's efforts in peace-building activities in this presentation, given the time allotted. Pre-independence. Comrade Nkomo was born and grew up in a very oppressive and trying Rhodesian environment. Born in Somoke communal lands in Matabele South in 1917, he grew up like any other boy in a rural community, later to be known as native reserves, to use the language of white colonial settlers. His early adulthood days were characterized by trade unionism, which I believe shaped his national outlook and subsequently his national politics. He became a fully-fledged nationalist when he was elected president of the Southern Rhodesia African National Congress, SRANC, in 1957. In 1959, the SRANC was banned by the settler regime, but this gave way to the formation of the National Democratic Party, NDP, in 1960. Again with Dr. Joshua Nkomo as its president. This was to be outlawed again immediately, bringing about the birth of the Zimbabwe African People's Union, ZAPU, in 1961. The formation of ZAPU was followed by a period of turmoil where its leaders were imprisoned or restricted. Naturally, the members became divided as intended by the regime. Zimbabwe African Union, ZANU, came into being in 1963, and Comrade Nkomo was not a member of it. In trying to address this fragmentation that was taking place, he came up with the People's Caretaker Council, PCC, which was supposed to spearhead the mobilization of the people for the struggle for majority rule. Once again, the regime reacted brutally by rounding up and restricting members to Nyikadzino, a remote place in the southeast of Zimbabwe, bordering Mozambique. Dr. Nkomo was to remain there prisons until the end of 1974, when he was released and flew to Zambia. In 1975, he was again elected as the president of ZAPU, and soon after, he was to intensify the liberation struggle from Zambia. Indeed, as soon as he got back to the helm, the abortive Geneva conferences of 1976 to 1977 followed. In 1979, the landmark Lancaster House Conference convened, leading to a ceasefire and the subsequent independence of Zimbabwe. This short chronicle of events marks the key aspects of the life of Dr. Nkomo in pre-independence Zimbabwe. In highlighting these, my aim is to put into perspective the rise of a visionary from a simple village boy tending to the family head to a national leader. Along the way, shattering the dreams of a sophisticated colonial settler regime. His tenacity cannot be in doubt as he juggled family life and political life, while moving from one band organization to another, and often building alternatives, all to ensure that all of us attained the peaceful Zimbabwe we dreamt of. What comes to the fore in the life of the late Dr. Nkomo is that peace cannot be built outside justice and the recognition of a people's right to self-determination. Such peace, if at all, is false peace. In fact, sheer acquiescence to operation. Similarly, reconciliation cannot subsist under these conditions. This involves the paradox of military in peace building, in that the use of military force to dismantle an oppressive system becomes sine qua non for peace building and reconciliation. Herein lies the ethical leadership of General Josh. Now coming to independence, perhaps one of the most trying times in the history of Zimbabwe is the advent of the integration of the three forces involved during the liberation struggle, namely ZANRA, ZIPRA, the Rhodesian Army. The formal process itself is well documented, and I have alluded to it in the preceding paragraphs. But what many do not appreciate are the background activities and maneuvers that went on behind the public observation, more so as these relate to Dr. Nkomo. It must be understood that during this period, there was a lot of mistrust between and amongst these integrating forces, as well as between the two liberation forces and their former political leadership. To compound matters, a third force in the form of the sinister hand of apartheid cannot be overruled. To compound matters, in the form of the hand of apartheid readily fished in our troubled waters, an explosive stage was thus set for a conflict situation which undermined our early independence from 1982 to 1987, when the unit accord was signed ending hostilities. It took mature and ethical leadership, as well as commitment to national peace and national interest, above personal ambitions and egos, to bring this about. Here lies the greatness of Joshua Nkomo. Indeed, his rightful claim to the moniker of Father Zimbabwe. Even though we no longer have him with us today, his peace-building legacy endures and underpins the stability and unity which secures us all. I am aware that this lecture was meant to entrap me into making my just considered public statement on Operation Restore Legacy. You can congratulate yourselves for succeeding where many have failed. We codenamed it Operation Restore Legacy, advisedly. When you are a foremost commander whose roots are steeped in the liberation struggle, and you see the very fabric and foundation of the society you helped to build as a cadre of the struggle, the very society you protected and defended as a commander, threatened with the implosion and collapse, what becomes uppermost on your mind is not political terminology or jargon, but your responsibilities as a man in charge of an institution which is the state's last line of defense as bided by the Constitution, Section 212, explicitly states, and I quote, "The function of the defense forces is to protect Zimbabwe, its people, its national security and its interest, and its national integrity, and to uphold this Constitution." That's the function of the defense forces. What has not been apparent to our sophisticated scholars is that where the figure and the symbol of the state is himself a victim of what threatened disintegration, the defense forces, as the last line of protecting the constitutional order, is enjoined to act. What made Operation Restore Legacy stand out and apart from the average African experience was in how measured and respectful of the cornerstones of the constitutional order it was. What is significant is not that the tanks got out of the barracks, but one, Parliament remained functional during the operation. Two, the judicial went about its business as usual. And three, the rest of the executive branch continued to function as normal, and most spectacularly, that the then head of state in government and commander-in-chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces continued to enjoy his honors and salute. including from me personally and the rest of the officers, Zimbabwe Defense Forces. I and as all of you will testify, the broad civilian society remained not only free and unfettered, but actually voluntarily joined in the defense of the constitutional order. Thereafter, both the ruling party and the national parliament took steps that decided the political fate of our Zimbabwe. I leave history to judge. As we reflect on the life and role of our dear departed father Zimbabwe, and also peace building and reconciliation, what these mean for our society. We should never forget that peace and stability are, once established, must be defended at all costs. The recent terror attack on the national leadership at the White City Stadium on the 23rd of June 2018, barely hours after His Excellency the President, Comrade Idi Mnangagwa, had visited Epsilon Hospital, itself Umdalawetu's dream for healing our society, brought to the fore the sheer fragility of national peace if taken for granted and left undefended. Dr. Nkomo's reaction to this heinous terror attack is as predictable as is obvious. He would have denounced it as cowardly and inhuman. We thus take cue from him to unreservedly condemn in the strongest of terms these mentions of violence who have no place in the society which the late Joshua Nkomo built and sacrificed for so much. The police and other arms of the security working with the rest of our peace-loving society must ensure that this evil is accounted and must never go unpunished. As we commemorate the centenary of the birth of Father Zimbabwe, Chiwenga, Dr. Joshua Mqabulo Nkomo, Zimbabwe should treasure his exploits, praise, peace building, and national reconciliation that he advocated for the betterment of the livelihoods of all Zimbabweans. I thank you.
At this juncture, I'm going to call upon Professor Muwati to chair the next two sessions, the discussants and question and answer. Professor Muwati.
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies. The People's General indeed, so says the Minister. I'll also add and say that the Wise General. Ladies and gentlemen, one would wish that June 2018 was November 2017. If that was the case, then I would have said the following. To quote from the great Chinese thinker, it is very interesting but very short work entitled The Art of War. Sun Tzu says in that book, the wise general is a lord of destiny. He holds the nation's peace or peril in his hands. And indeed, the general retired is an embodiment and a living testimony of that kind of philosophy. And for that particular reason, I just want to invite everyone in this room one more time to put our hands together for the general. Thank you very much. Thank you, General Retired Honorable Vice President Dr. Constantino, Guvheya, Dominic, Nyikadzino, Chiwenga, for that sublime and erudite presentation, indeed an intellectual tour de force. We have clearly demonstrated the nexus between the towering figure of Joshua Nkomo and the kind of vision and agenda that we have today as a nation. And for that particular reason, this is the kind of experience, for example, that makes it possible for us to then marshal the argument that the firewood that a people has is adequate for the kind of cooking that they do. There is no need for us to be running helter-skelter even beyond our borders, to be looking for models and blueprints in terms of the kind of values and value systems that should traject the national consciousness in the kind of path that we all desire. We have the models, we have the blueprints, and Dr. Joshua Nyongolo Nkomo is indeed such a towering blueprint that we all must be able to learn from. So I will not waste your time. I will now have this privilege to invite our discussant, Professor Asu Patel, to come to the podium.
Thank you very much. Acting President, Vice Chancellor, and all other protocol observed. I've been making some notes, so I don't know whether I will go through all of them in terms of the speech that was made. But the presence of Acting President Chiwenga cast my mind to two things. One was that he was a student in our department not too long ago. And I must say he wrote a very good master's dissertation, which I happened to read also. But then he deserted us. He went to KwaZulu-Natal and got his doctorate there. But anyway, that's his choice. But the second is a bit of a sadness. And that is, the occasion is about Joshua Nkomo. And the acting president is a mediator, if you like, in our remembrance of Joshua Nkomo. And I remember him when I first met him in 1959. That'll tell you how young I am. And over the years, it was my privilege to get to know him and others. And it is true that as the acting president has put Joshua Nkomo's legacy in the context of an intellectual discussion of the role of the military. Now there's a lot of debate, as you know, and I'm sure the acting president has read quite widely about it. That is the argument about the increasing democratization, or what is called democratization, where the military, civil and military relations are supposed to be disaggregated. In the sense that the military should not be involved in politics, and certainly not with the uniform. Outside of the uniform is something else. And that debate is still continuing and will continue for some time. But I think what General Chiwenga has done is to put the role of the military in Zimbabwe in the context of two things. One is the methodology of independence, namely the guerrilla war itself, the armed struggle, whatever we call it. And that it cannot be forgotten and be put in a freezer as if it is the past only. And of course those, as his own narrative explains, I think he joined the liberation struggle at about 17 or something, 17 years. He's still very young because he joined so early. And the question is, when you retire, what do you do? The question remains that people who are retired from the armed forces still have a role to play in the society because they are citizens of that society. And so the debate we've been having, or some of us have been looking at, in terms of the disputations going on, that the military should not be involved, particularly on, for example, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, etc. It seems to me a bit pointless. Because once I change my direction, change my job, change my situation, then clearly, unless I'm a criminal or something, or I'm insane, right, I should have a role to play, providing I have the ability to play. So within that general context, the acting president has tried to look at the intellectual and academic debate, about, particularly in terms of stability, in terms of unity, in terms of peace building, preventive diplomacy, etc. And then come right towards the end of this discussion about the Operation Restore Legacy. And clearly he's articulated the role of the military and why the military intervened to some extent, or we might call it the military assisted a process. Some people call it other things, but that is his position, that it's a valid position, a valid role for the military to take, both in terms of its own history of the country and in terms of the constitution, which we all saw him waving on television at the time. And there is a dispute, of course, between two sections of the constitution, and that's for the lawyers to decide. I'm not a lawyer. But Operation Restore Legacy is justified on the grounds, firstly of the constitution, and secondly of the increasing role of the military, not simply as an institution apart from activities in society, but also as part of society. And therefore, when it comes into play, there are situations when, of course, it is counterproductive to do that. But the General has argued, very succinctly argued, about the nature of the responsibility on the defense establishment at the time when the political center was increasingly under pressure and under question. What I find interesting also is that he contrasted between the military as an instrument of physical harm, which it is, because it has the monopoly of legitimate force in a society. And secondly, the military as an instrument of peace and stability. And of course, these two are often seen as contradictory. And certainly if you are of a particular disposition in international relations or in democratic theory and practice, you will see that these two are totally contradictory. What the acting president has done very well and therefore concluded that in fact the role of the military depends on the situation in a particular context. And then it has to be justified either in terms of history, or in terms of the Constitution, or in terms of the support of the people or not, and all of these things combined. So he's done that very well, and I'm very proud that he was a member of our student body. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Patel, for confining your presentation to 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation in this room has moved to another level. For that particular reason, I will now open the discussion to the floor. We only have 10 minutes, and I'm inviting questions, not those individuals who want to take this as an opportunity to smuggle in some mini presentations. So I will take 3 questions only. Yes, let's begin with the lady here, and then that gentleman there.
A good day to everyone. All protocol observed. My name is Mandate Mlodwa. I'm based in Bulawayo. So my question is also a concern. There was so much talk around the issue of young people accessing this history, this Zimbabwean history. But one of my concerns is our history, the textbooks that we read in high school, don't document much of the history that comes after independence. And I feel like there is so much that happened between 1980 and now. And as you're saying that we should access these booklets or newsletters that can detail the history of our liberation heroes and everything, where do we get it? And then also just the last thing, it's right now we're learning so much about the role of the military. Something that we didn't think made any sense at all. But again, it's not in the history books. The young people don't understand it. We're going to argue it so much on Twitter and Facebook, and we're going to argue why the army is in the streets, because we don't understand why they're there. And I might have the privilege of having been here to learn about it. But what about those people that are not here, that can't access it in the textbook, that don't have this knowledge? Because at the end of the day, we oppose development, not because it's not going to work for us, but we don't understand what you're trying to do. So I would love some clarity on how you intend to help us into the space that you're in.
Thank you. My name is Blessed Mkla. The acting president said that in his lecture that we need to put mechanisms in place so that issues of conflict do not recur or do not happen. So I want to learn from him what our government is doing so that the situation of restore legacy does not recur or does not happen in our life. I would also want to understand in the aspect of spoilers. Given the situation that happened in Guvheya just a week ago, do we have any spoilers of the peace building that is happening in Zimbabwe? And are there any mechanisms to ensure that these spoilers are also contained? Thank you.
Is there any question anywhere? Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Bongani Johnson from Reserve School. Basically, the question is, if Dr. Nkomo was to come back, would he be happy with the progress that has been made? Would he be happy with what is happening right now? My question is not threatening the authority, but because at the end of the day, we might be celebrating someone who left us a nation in Zimbabwe. is Africa. But are we carrying forward this mission? Are we doing the right thing that he did for us? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now take this opportunity to humbly request the acting Vice President, General. The acting President, General Retired Dr. Constantino Guvheya, Dominic, Nyikadzino, Chiwenga, to respond to those persons. You can do so from where you are seated.
I hope, thank you, Master of Ceremony. Maybe I will have a comment why I ran away from the University of Zimbabwe. No, I thought the Vice Chancellor was going to rescue me. At that time, that was supposed to be a secret between me and the Vice Chancellor. We were given five vacancies for men to do the doctorates, but there were so many where the thing were 17. So those who we thought were quite busy in the offices, we said they should do their doctorates here, like our now foreign minister, he did his doctorate here. So it was only a question of whether you could all accommodate us. But on a very serious note, Professor Patel is very stingy with these marks. Honorable Minister and Vice Chancellor, the questions which have been asked in the comments are quite thought-provoking, and I like them. Yes, the history we are talking about, the history of Zimbabwe from 1980, not well documented. Partially it could be right, but might not be absolutely correct. The history is being documented. So many compatriots and even researchers are making, writing their our history of what happened pre-independence and what happened after independence. Government at one time commissioned a team to, not federal government, but the parties. The party commissioned a team to write the history. But we're now finding it that people did not want it to be objective. They were being very subjective. Write about himself, where he did his best, and where he messed up, he doesn't want it to come out. So I don't believe personally that if I mess up things, they must be hit, they must be put under the the rug. No, they must come out as exactly what happened. But as human beings, it's very difficult. You can't criticize yourself, is it? But it's something which you must learn to do. Where you err, you should be able to say, yes, there we erred. But the way we are doing the history now, we had a team here which was trained here at the University of Zimbabwe. I think some 2 years ago, on how to gather facts, from people who were involved in the struggle outside our borders, Zambia, Mozambique, to see what others have done with their armed struggle history. And our general cooperation, because the people of Zimbabwe are the ones who fought the war around the country. And if our history has to be properly documented, we must get what happened from our people, from the early days of our nationalists. We still have people alive. One is Dr. Ndovu, the one who is trying to hear what I'm trying to say. He's one of those. And he was there, he was with the nationalists. So he has got quite a lot of information, but which has now to be corroborated. Our team, which has, because we've got to approach this thing on two axes, from the military point of view and from the political point of view. We have started writing how the struggle started, because that's what we know best. Struggle started from taking the Chinoi battle. What amounted to what is it that happened for the Chinoi battle to be launched? At the same time, what happened to the Wange battle in 1967? So the two operations which were launched by Zana, Zipra, respectively. And we then all went back to our drawing boards, because we had left one thing, that if we had to win the war, we had to involve our people. So that's why there was that lull of activity, Not that there was no fighting, but from 66, 67, the war really got to the fore in the 70s. And this is what happened, but it's quite interesting that I'm seeing our colleagues now burning the candles and writing. And when you write, this history is, you have you can write one piece of paper just like this, of what you know best, and it will come out either as an article, or then we have got, writers, historians who are going to collect all those and then punch them into a book. And then we have our history. But, as you know, people will continue to write even well after we are gone. Because they will be picking up pieces of information which were made sometimes to be very secret or top secret of what actually happened, which the people outside did not know. This is why you always find that you decipher documents after every period. Maybe after 30 years or 40, and some others they will go for quite a long time before they can be made public to the population, because they will be affecting. What if a person was a sellout, but he holds a high position? Can we do something? So those are the difficulties you get in our history. But what I can assure you, I hope some of you have seen the Chinoi film by the Eastern, what do you call that? Wonde Valley. With the defense forces of this country just produced the film on Chinoi Petro. So some of them are going to come in form of films. Some are going to come as either simple papers, and some are going to write books. I have seen a number of books where people have attempted to write about our history. When you read it, then you find the person is glorifying himself. And he's not saying exactly what happened. But now to answer your question, it's a very good question, where we are now encouraging all Zimbabweans, whatever information you have about the struggle, write it down. Let's have that to develop the art of writing. The art of writing. We are not very good writers. And you just get someone where you can narrate, the story, and someone will put it correctly on paper for the future generations. Even at your age, from what your father and mother will be talking, you take a piece of paper, write. And you find that that information will be corroborated by others, and that's how books are written, and that's how history is written. Now, what mechanism are we putting in place to avoid? No, there will not be a recurrence again. Let me assure you. There will not be a recurrence, because I think you are misleading. You are taking it from an academic point of view. But where you can, as a nation, get into a situation which you are no longer going to control, and you watch people are no longer planning, even those in business who are just going to work, they will plan for the day, because tomorrow you never know what happens. So the economy collapsed. Not that even if we were under sanctions, we could have done something, but because people were not sure of what tomorrow will hold for them, there was no policy consistency. And when you get people who are not constitutionally in government making decisions, and even battering the judicial service, firing people left, right, and center, then where are you going? If I don't like you, but when we go into this four corner, this is this auditorium, but let's take it as an office. If we go in there, nobody can take the country into his or her pocket. But the country can take us, all of us, in its huge pocket. We must all enjoy. We hold different views. We hold different views and we must accept that. But it mustn't be your own way. What about others? You must listen to what others are saying. And if they have said that cannot go, you go by majority. But decrees were being done maybe during the times of embarrass and so forth. We can create a situation which is quite bad for ourselves, and that has to be so. My dear brother there who asked that question, no, spoilers will never be allowed. Once again, that's why I've said, never, if you attain peace, hold on to it, never relax, and have a recurrence. Because peace is difficult to achieve. The word love, peace, tolerance, they are very difficult if you allow them to disintegrate from your, from the midst, and then you've got other explanations. By the time you say what has really caused this, there will be no one to ask. And I think you can now see where, as a people, as a nation, if you are not careful, where you will end up going. And you will completely lose direction. But what we would want is for us to have unity, and unity brings us peace, and peace brings us development. If Dr. Nkomo was to come back, would he be happy? Certainly he would be happy. Certainly he would be happy. I think for some of you, really look at maybe there are too many people, there are too many WhatsApps, too many this, and so people sometimes they don't go on to news. I don't have a WhatsApp, I don't go on social media. But for the young ones, yes, it is good because they want to exercise their minds. But let's do this. When we were going around the country with His Excellency the President, Vice President Mohadi, we saw bridges which were built 22 years ago, some quite long, 150-meter long bridge, 200-meter long bridge, but built, but there was no road which connected. They were left like that. If you want to take a simple thing, a road through from Karoi to Magunje, which was supposed to get to Victoria Falls, if you go, maybe you only be going for 400 kilometers, but if you leave Harare wanting to go by road to Victoria Falls via Guvheya and then Guvheya you are almost crossing 1,000 kilometers. But that Zimbabwe was to come, I think he would appreciate what is being done now. If people are free to say whatever they want and to do whatever they want in a democratic way, I think that's good. Today we see 22 individuals and political parties vying for the president of this country. It's good. It has never happened. No country has ever had such so everybody will be happy. I thought I was going to also to meet the candidate here, but I think if we go in this direction and we all get united, yes, let people say and let people try whatever they want. And if he feels says, how was it? Some maybe will come out of the race much poorer. But no one has refused you. No one impedes you. If you want to go, as long as you don't destroy other people's properties, fine. You've got the time to waste. We will see. So that's that. Because you take out that steam out of that anger out of the people, let them do, then you say, but what is it that I'm doing? I think I'm wrong. Then that's all what we want. And we will be these our children here, the school children, we will start now to get correct ideas on how a state should be run. So I wish I could get Father Zimbabwe to come, and I think he would be happy. Michael, isn't it? Probably. Probably, yes. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those responses. And I want to commend also the young man who was courageous enough to stand. I saw that you were being cheered by your fan club over there as you were standing. Thank you very much for bringing such a fantastic fan club like that. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. At this juncture, I'm going to, first of all, thank Professor Moati for chairing the two sessions. Thank you very much, Professor Moati. I'm going to call upon the second son of Dr. Joshua Nkomo, who is the head of the house, Sibangaliswe Nkomo, to come and give us a vote of thanks.
Thank you, MC. Acting President, Comrade Chiwenga, Minister of Higher Tertiary Education, Vice Chancellor of the University of Zimbabwe, Ministers here present, MPs here present, officials from the offices of the presidency, all protocol observed. Before I go into my written speech, or my written remarks, allow me to say one or two things from the depth of my soul. There was a time when we greeted each other in a cultural and traditional way. But today, you get people saying, Zulu say. Yes, Kupani, Dalawam. I think that's disrespect. And one of the things that Father Zimbabwe taught us was to be respectful, among other things. Respectful, tolerant, and be together. Togetherness. That's what Father Zimbabwe taught us. Today we look at each other and say, he's an arrogant Shona. He's a hostile Debe. Why? Because we've moved away from what our founding father taught us. We are, in reality, one nation and a family. Ours is not some Christian brotherhood, some Pan-Africanist type of relationship. Ours is a real blood relationship. It's not some esoteric imagination that we are blood related. You find people, the problem is this, you find people migrating northwards, coming from the south part of the country. When you cross the Shaman River, people tend to change from Sibanda to Shumba. You cross the Mnyati River, you change from being Nkomo to a Mombeshora. Or Kariga Mombe even. But the truth is that together we are a family, a blood family. I dare anyone in this room to challenge me on that one. We tend to forget that. And to make things worse, some foreigner from abroad came and said, no, we are no longer family. And we followed that, which is unfortunate. But the truth, I'll say it again, we are a family. Please, I want the youth, the young ones, our children and grandchildren to know that. Let's teach our children the truth about our relationships in this country. Because that brings us together, that makes us work together, that makes us love each other, which Father Zimbabwe truly intended. Everything begins with respect. With respect, there is order. With order, there is progress. I don't know any other way of building oneness. Having said that, let me get to my prepared remarks. On behalf of the Nkomo family, the Joshua Nkomo Cultural Movement Trust, which spearheads the Joshua Nkomo Centenary celebrations, like-minded organizations and myself, I would like to express my profound gratitude to the government of Zimbabwe under the new dispensation for partnering us in extolling the brand of Joshua Mqabulo Nkomo, Father Zimbabwe. As we officially conclude celebrating 100 years of Nkomoism, we appreciate and acknowledge the warm relations that exist between ourselves and the current leadership in government. Until recently, it had become almost impossible to directly engage with the leadership of this country. Ubuntu, Unu, humanity must always be displayed amongst each other and one another if we are to build with an aim to achieve a nation where we shall live in peace and harmony as a people together. The launch of the Centenary celebrations was witnessed by more than 30,000 people who gathered at St. Joseph's, Kezi, in Matebele South Province, where Dr. Nkomo hails from, on 10th of June last year. The event stands as a true reflection of our commitment as Joshua Nkomo cultural movement in cultivating the values of peace, love, unity, and tolerance as upheld by our icon, Dr. Joshua Nkomo. This lecture is a continuation of a series of lectures started as part of the Centenary celebrations. The first lecture was held on the 17th of June 2017 at the University of Witwatersrand in Joburg, South Africa, followed by another held at the Joshua Mqabulo Polytech in Rwanda, Matebele South Province, on the 1st of September 2017. In sum, the purpose of these annual lectures include, but not limited to, the following. 1. To honor and highlight, for the benefit of posterity, the rich legacy of leadership, personal sacrifice, patriotism, and national reconstruction that have been bequeathed to Zimbabwe by this great champion of Zimbabwe's nationalist movement that culminated in independence in 1980. 2. To recall and uphold the constructive spirit of national reconciliation that informed some of the most selfless decisions of this great nationalist, and to celebrate the profound capacity of the men to subordinate and sacrifice narrow sectional interests under the imperatives of the broader and more compelling interests of national unity. 3. To explore the power and content of the Joshua Nkomo brand and the transgenerational impact of his leadership and its relevance to modern day and future Zimbabwe, especially given the challenges of the post-colonial developmental state. The 2018 lecture delivered today, whose topic is on peace and reconciliation, is part of our efforts as a collective to foster dialogue and academic discourse on a very pertinent issue that affects our society today. I'm confident that our choice of keynote speaker, the Honorable President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, has done justice to the topic at hand. As we gather here today, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to remind each and every one of us here and the millions of our people out there that it is all our responsibility to commit ourselves in grassroots healing towards national healing, peace, building, and reconciliation. I take this opportunity to declare our commitment as family, as Joshua Nkomo cultural movement, and myself in particular, to work with the government of Zimbabwe and all stakeholders towards building peace and unity in our country, Zimbabwe, which many of our heroes sacrificed their lives for. The patriotic vision that inspired our liberation struggle should always be our guiding light as we unselfishly endeavor to this worthy cause. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades, as a country, we should not shy away from our past regardless of its challenges. Instead, we should exchange ideas on how to address the issues and move forward progressively. If we cannot do it for ourselves, let us do it for the young generation and many other generations yet to come. We would like to applaud the new dispensation for this commitment towards peaceful, free and fair elections that are to be held on the 30th of July 2018. Having said that, we wish to also call upon all our leaders and all political organizations to also play their part in preaching the message of peace, love, unity, and tolerance during the campaign period, on the election day and after. Lest we forget how our country has suffered as a result of political violence. We believe we are all Zimbabweans first, before anything else, and not even political affiliations and tribal lines should be allowed to divide us into us and them. We are all the same, and we are the children of the soil. Abantwana benhlabathi, bana bevu. It is my desire, it is my personal desire and wish to see a Zimbabwe whereby tribalism, racism, and all forms of egregious discrimination are criminalized, made criminal at law. We shall never and never again hate one another, and all the divide and rule systems that were planted in our society must be uprooted completely, and a new Zimbabwe must prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, we value the Joshua Nkomo brand as it will continue to bring us together and help us reflect on our identity and the Zimbabwe we want going forward. We condemn in the strongest terms the unfortunate incident that took place at White City Stadium in Bulawayo, right next to the home of our icon, Father Zimbabwe, this past Saturday. Such a cowardly act has no place in modern society and the nation we are building together. As I conclude, allow me to acknowledge my team, which works tirelessly every day in conceptualizing and executing these legacy projects and programs that keep the Joshua Nkomo brand alive. It's a team of brilliant and dedicated young people. Could you please stand up, Joshua Nkomo team, so people can see you. Please, let's give them a hand. I'm very proud of these guys. They work 24 hours non-stop, and they are volunteers. They are not on any payroll. They are dedicated to the brand. Anyway, Mr. Vice President, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to you personally for having accepted our idea and made it come alive. I also want to express gratitude to all our partners in this endeavor in carrying forward the legacy and the vision of Father Zimbabwe. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nkomo, for those remarks. This marks the end of this event. There are refreshments in the foyer, but before we go for that, if we could be kind enough and onerous enough to allow the Vice President, the Acting President and his team over here to depart first. Thank you.